Olivia sat by the cafe window in Nairobi, sunlight spilling across the wooden table as she gently stirred her coffee, lost in thought. The aroma of roasted beans mingled with the warm breeze drifting in from the bustling street. Suddenly, Daniel entered, tall and confident in his navy blue suit, scanning the room until his eyes met hers. A smile curved on his lips as he walked over, and in that instant, something unspoken passed between them, an energy neither could ignore, setting the tone for everything to come. Olivia smiled softly as Daniel leaned forward, his voice calm yet full of curiosity, asking about her dreams and passions. She laughed gently, her fingers tracing the rim of the coffee cup as she spoke about her love for art and the life she hoped to build. Around them, the cafe hummed with quiet conversations, but in that moment, it felt as though the world had faded away, leaving only two souls connecting deeply under the warm glow of the afternoon sun. Hand in hand, Olivia and Daniel strolled along a quiet Nairobi street, the golden sunset painting the sky with hues of orange and pink. Laughter escaped their lips as a soft breeze carried the scent of blooming flowers around them. Daniel held a small bouquet of roses, brushing it against her arm playfully, while Olivia's yellow dress danced in the wind. In that serene moment, their hearts spoke silently, promising something deeper than either of them had ever imagined before. Olivia walked into the luxurious dining room, her heels clicking softly against the polished wooden floor as her eyes adjusted to the warm glow of golden chandeliers. At the head of the table sat Richard, his posture commanding, a calm smile playing on his lips as though every detail of this evening had been carefully orchestrated. Beside him was Barbara, her elegance undeniable, draped in a silk gown of deep gold, her sharp eyes scanning Olivia like a queen inspecting a guest in her royal court. Olivia forced a polite smile, feeling the weight of judgment in Barbara's gaze, and gently took her seat at the table. The aroma of rich African cuisine filled the room, yet Olivia's appetite vanished beneath the tension. Barbara spoke first, her tone sweet but edged with steel, offering compliments that sounded more like veiled tests. Richard listened silently, his fingers tapping against the wine glass, watching Olivia closely, as though this dinner was not about food, but about power, pride, and hidden expectations. Olivia walked into the luxurious dining room, her heels clicking softly against the polished wooden floor as her eyes adjusted to the warm glow of golden chandeliers. At the head of the table sat Richard, his posture commanding, a calm smile playing on his lips as though every detail of this evening had been carefully orchestrated. Beside him was Barbara, her elegance undeniable, draped in a silk gown of deep gold, her sharp eyes scanning Olivia like a queen inspecting a guest in her royal court. Olivia forced a polite smile, feeling the weight of judgment in Barbara's gaze, and gently took her seat at the table. The aroma of rich African cuisine filled the room, yet Olivia's appetite vanished beneath the tension. Barbara spoke first, her tone sweet but edged with steel, offering compliments that sounded more like veiled tests. Richard listened silently, his fingers tapping against the wine glass, watching Olivia closely, as though this dinner was not about food, but about power, pride, and hidden expectations. Daniel sat on the edge of the sleek leather sofa in their modern Nairobi apartment, his fingers nervously intertwining as he prepared to speak words that would change everything. The evening sun poured through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting a warm golden glow on Olivia, who sat opposite him in a simple floral dress, her face calm and trusting. He cleared his throat, trying to steady his voice, but the tremor betrayed his unease. "Olivia," he began, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes, "there's something important we need to discuss before the wedding." She tilted her head, curiosity softening her expression, unaware of the storm about to break. He continued slowly, almost apologetically, explaining how his parents insisted on a prenuptial agreement, their wealth needing protection. The words hung heavy in the air, slicing through the warmth like a blade. Olivia's smile faded, her eyes searching his for reassurance, but finding only fear, doubt, and the echo of control lurking behind his calm tone. Barbara sat at the head of the polished mahogany dining table, her posture regal, her presence commanding every inch of the room. Draped in an elegant crimson gown that shimmered under the chandelier's glow, she held the prenuptial agreement in one perfectly manicured hand like a weapon disguised as paper. Olivia sat across from her, wearing a soft cream blouse, her fingers nervously twisting together in her lap as her heart pounded beneath her calm facade. "It's only a formality, dear," Barbara said sweetly, her tone dripping with an authority that left no room for refusal. Her eyes, sharp and cold, pierced through Olivia, silently reminding her of the empire she was about to marry into. Richard sat silently at the far end, his expression unreadable, while the ticking clock amplified the tension in the air. Every second felt heavier than the last as Barbara slid the papers across the table, her lips curling into a smile that didn't reach her calculating eyes, leaving Olivia cornered in a gilded cage of power. Olivia sat on the edge of her bed in the dimly lit apartment, the soft glow of a single lamp casting long shadows on the walls as silence pressed against her like an unbearable weight. Her hands trembled as she held the pen that had sealed her fate only hours earlier, the prenuptial agreement lying crumpled on the nightstand like a cruel reminder of her surrender. Tears streamed down her cheeks, hot and relentless, blurring the world into a haze of grief and regret. She pressed her palms against her face, trying to silence the sobs clawing their way out. But they came anyway, raw and uncontrollable. In that lonely moment, the walls that had once felt safe now closed in, suffocating her with memories of laughter and promises that suddenly seemed fragile, hollow, and easily broken. Olivia whispered his name, her voice breaking as her chest heaved, a quiet plea into an empty room where no one could hear, no one could care, and no one could save her from the truth she now carried in silence. Olivia sat in front of the ornate mirror in a lavish bridal suite, her reflection almost unrecognizable beneath layers of flawless makeup, and an ivory gown that shimmered like starlight. Around her, bridesmaids moved hurriedly, adjusting veils and smoothing fabric, their chatter a distant hum against the deafening thud of her own heartbeat. A hairstylist added the final touches, weaving delicate pearls into her dark curls, while photographers clicked endlessly, capturing moments she could barely feel. Her hands, adorned with diamond bracelets, rested on her lap, trembling despite her best effort to appear serene. The bouquet of white roses on the vanity smelled sweet but suffocating, each petal reminding her of promises wrapped in conditions. She forced a smile at her reflection, but her eyes betrayed the storm raging inside, a war between love, pride, and the bitter truth chained to her future. In that room full of beauty and light, Olivia felt like a guest in her own life, silently screaming for a freedom she could not grasp. The grand hall glittered with golden chandeliers and cascades of white and blush flowers, casting a warm glow over the gathered guests who murmured in anticipation as Olivia stepped forward, her ivory gown trailing softly behind her. Her heart raced beneath layers of lace and silk, each step echoing in the vast space, a rhythm both thrilling and terrifying. Daniel waited at the altar, his black suit crisp, eyes scanning the room until they landed on hers, and for a fleeting moment, a smile softened his otherwise composed expression. The air was thick with expectation, and the scent of polished wood mingled with fragrant blooms, creating an intoxicating blend of ceremony and tension. As they exchanged glances, the music swelled, soft notes weaving through the hall like invisible threads binding them together. Every whispered prayer, every glance from the audience, seemed to press on her chest, reminding Olivia that this day, so meticulously planned, carried both the promise of love and the weight of unspoken truths she could no longer ignore. The first weeks of married life settled over Olivia and Daniel's Nairobi apartment like a heavy fog, suffocating in its quiet tension, as if the walls themselves were aware of the unspoken resentments lurking beneath polite smiles. Morning routines became silent battles. Olivia prepared breakfast while Daniel lingered over his phone, barely acknowledging her presence, his words clipped and distant. She tried to bridge the growing chasm with small gestures, arranging flowers on the counter, setting out his coffee just as he liked, but each act seemed only to emphasize her invisibility. Their conversations, once light and full of laughter, now carried an edge, a careful navigation of words that might ignite arguments over chores, schedules, or imagined slights. Evenings, meant for shared comfort, became exercises in restraint, with Olivia retreating to quiet corners of the living room, clutching a pillow as Daniel scrolled through emails, indifferent. In the stillness of these nights, she felt the weight of unfulfilled expectations pressing down, a silent reminder that love alone could not bridge a growing divide steeped in misunderstanding and emotional neglect. Olivia stood on the balcony of their Nairobi apartment as twilight draped the city in shades of purple and gold. The distant hum of traffic below a stark contrast to the hollow silence pressing against her heart. Wrapped in a soft shawl, she hugged herself, feeling the chill of the evening seep into her bones, but it was not the air that made her shiver. It was the absence of warmth beside her. The laughter and chatter she once imagined sharing with Daniel now felt like echoes from a life that never truly existed, replaced by cold routines and conversations that cut deeper than silence. Streetlights flickered on one by one, casting long shadows across the balcony floor, mirroring the heaviness settling inside her chest. Each twinkling light seemed to mock the connection she longed for, illuminating the void where understanding and companionship should have been. Olivia's fingers tightened around the railing as tears threatened to spill, a quiet testament to the isolation she bore even within a home meant for two, a painful reminder that love alone could not fill the emptiness she now carried. The argument erupted in their Nairobi apartment like a storm that had been brewing silently for weeks, Olivia's voice trembling with a mixture of anger and heartbreak as she faced Daniel, whose expression was unreadable yet laced with impatience. "How can you sit there and let them treat me like I'm invisible?" she demanded, her hands clenched at her sides, the tension in her chest almost unbearable. Daniel shifted uncomfortably, glancing away, muttering dismissive words that cut deeper than any insult, claiming she was overreacting and imagining slights. The room seemed to shrink around them, walls echoing with the weight of unspoken resentments and frustrations that had accumulated silently, suffocatingly, until they could no longer be contained. Olivia's tears mingled with her anger, her chest heaving as she pleaded for acknowledgement, for validation, for even a sliver of empathy from the man she had once trusted implicitly, realizing with a cold, sinking clarity that the love she thought would protect her had become another chain, binding her to disappointment and silent despair. Olivia sat alone at the small desk in their Nairobi apartment, the soft glow of the laptop screen illuminating her face as the city outside settled into quiet darkness, streetlights casting long, flickering shadows across the room. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, hesitant, heart pounding, as she opened her email inbox, a mix of curiosity and apprehension tightening her chest. Messages from work, reminders of unpaid bills, and a few mundane newsletters scrolled past, but one email caught her attention, its subject line simple yet heavy: a legal notice from a Chicago law firm regarding her great-uncle Edward's estate. Her hands shook as she clicked it open, reading the words over and over, barely able to comprehend that the uncle she had barely known had left her an inheritance worth millions. A fortune that suddenly shifted the balance of power in ways she had never imagined, leaving her breathless, stunned, and for the first time in weeks, tinged with hope amidst the weight of the lonely, tense nights she had endured. Olivia gripped her phone tightly, sitting on the edge of her bed in the dimly lit Nairobi apartment, the soft hum of the air conditioner mixing with the distant sounds of the city night, her heart hammering in anticipation and disbelief. With a deep breath, she dialed the number the email had provided, her fingers trembling slightly as each ring echoed through the quiet room. And finally a calm, professional voice answered, identifying themselves as the attorney handling her great-uncle Edward's estate. Olivia's throat tightened as she confirmed her identity, carefully asking for details and verification, her mind racing with visions of what this inheritance could mean, both for her own independence and the new sense of freedom it might bring from the suffocating control she had endured. Every word from the lawyer seemed to lift an invisible weight from her shoulders, the reality of millions now securely hers sinking in, transforming disbelief into a cautious but exhilarating hope for the life she had longed to reclaim. Olivia sank into the armchair by the window, the Nairobi skyline glowing softly in the distance as her mind struggled to process the confirmation she had just received from the lawyer. The words replaying in her head like a surreal echo she could hardly believe. Her fingers clutched the edge of the cushion, knuckles white, as a mixture of disbelief, excitement, and relief swirled inside her chest, making her heart pound unevenly. She closed her eyes, trying to steady her breathing, yet every inhale reminded her that the life she had endured, full of silent suffering and imposed limitations, was about to change completely. Millions of dollars, an inheritance from a relative she had barely known, suddenly placed her in a position of unimaginable freedom and security, an opportunity she had never dared to dream of. The weight of oppression she had felt under Daniel and his family's subtle control seemed to dissolve, leaving a new, electrifying clarity and the first real sense of empowerment she had experienced in years. A transformative moment that would redefine everything about her future. Olivia sat at the polished dining table in her parents' Nairobi home, the warm glow of pendant lights reflecting softly off the silverware, while her family chatted comfortably around her, unaware of the monumental news she now carried in her heart. She smiled politely, nodding and laughing at familiar stories, her hands folded neatly in her lap as she maintained the same calm, composed demeanor she had perfected over months of careful observation and self-restraint. Inside, however, a quiet storm of triumph and empowerment surged, each laugh and gentle response a shield hiding the knowledge of her newly confirmed inheritance. The scent of spiced Kenyan dishes filled the air, mingling with the soft hum of conversation. Yet Olivia's mind remained elsewhere, calculating, imagining, and savoring the private victory she had not yet revealed. She listened attentively, engaging just enough to appear warm and present, her eyes glinting with subtle awareness that her life, and the balance of power she had endured, was about to shift irreversibly in ways only she could control, a secret smile playing at the corners of her lips as she enjoyed the calm before the storm. Olivia moved gracefully through their Nairobi apartment, her every gesture polished and deliberate, a picture of the perfect, devoted wife as she attended to Daniel's needs with quiet efficiency, hiding the storm of thoughts swirling behind her calm expression. She arranged his dinner precisely as he liked it, adjusted the pillows on the sofa just so, and poured his tea with a steady hand, all while maintaining a soft, attentive smile that masked the sharp clarity building in her mind. Every word she spoke was measured, warm yet neutral, each laugh timed to perfection, giving the impression of contentment and harmony as Daniel lounged casually, oblivious to the silent rebellion simmering beneath her composed exterior. Though outwardly compliant, every action, every nod, every whispered affirmation was carefully calculated, a subtle performance designed to maintain appearances while she silently measured the distance between illusion and reality. Savoring the quiet power of knowing, she now held a secret that could shift their entire world, a private strength hidden beneath the perfect facade of obedience and marital devotion. Olivia stepped into the Walker family's grand Nairobi dining room with a measured grace, the polished wooden floor reflecting the soft chandelier light, her posture straight and confident, every step deliberate, signaling a quiet authority that contrasted sharply with the submissive wife they had always assumed she was. She wore a sleek, emerald green dress that complemented her features, and her calm smile conveyed warmth while hiding the sharp awareness pulsing beneath the surface, each glance scanning the room for reactions. The long mahogany table was set immaculately, silverware gleaming, floral arrangements in full bloom, yet Olivia's eyes were fixed on Barbara and Richard, the couple whose arrogance and dismissive control had shadowed her life. As she approached her seat, heads turned subtly, conversations paused momentarily, and a hush of curiosity rippled through the air, Olivia's composed demeanor and unspoken confidence radiating in a way that silently announced she was no longer the powerless figure they had tried to define, commanding the room not with words, but with the unmistakable aura of someone who had reclaimed control over her life, her inheritance, and her destiny. Olivia placed her hands gently on the polished mahogany table, her eyes meeting Barbara and Richard's with a calm, steady intensity that made the room fall into an almost tangible silence, the soft clinking of silverware and low murmurs of conversation fading into the background as she took a slow, deliberate breath and began to speak. "It's interesting you mentioned careful financial planning," she said, her voice clear and composed, a subtle smile playing at the corners of her lips, "because I recently received confirmation that my great-uncle Edward left me his entire estate, $28 million to be precise." The words hung in the air like a striking wind, Barbara's hands trembling slightly as a wine glass threatened to slip, Richard's face draining of color as disbelief flickered across his features, and Daniel froze mid-bite, mouth agape. In that moment, the balance of power shifted irreversibly, Olivia's composed demeanor masking the quiet triumph surging through her, as the very people who had attempted to control and belittle her now faced the undeniable truth that her life, her fortune, and her freedom were firmly, irrevocably, and unquestionably hers alone. Barbara's hand trembled violently as the words sank in, the delicate crystal glass she had been holding slipping through her fingers and shattering against the polished marble floor. A loud, sharp sound that echoed through the Walker family's Nairobi dining room and drew every gaze toward her in stunned silence, the scattered shards glinting under the chandelier light like frozen sparks. Her eyes widened, mouth slightly agape, disbelief etched into every line of her face as she struggled to comprehend that the woman she had dismissed, controlled, and subtly humiliated now possessed an inheritance of $28 million, an unimaginable fortune that immediately shifted the power dynamic in the room. Richard stiffened beside her, his jaw tightening, eyes darting between Olivia's calm, composed expression and the shards of broken glass, realization and panic flickering across his features, while Daniel sat frozen, stunned into silence, the careful control he once exercised over Olivia rendered utterly meaningless by the revelation of a wealth that was hers alone. And the air vibrated with tension as the room collectively absorbed the irreversible truth. Daniel froze completely, his fork suspended midair, eyes wide and unfocused, as the words Olivia had spoken reverberated through the grand Nairobi dining room like an unstoppable tide, washing over him with a mixture of disbelief, shame, and dawning panic that rendered him utterly incapable of movement or speech. Every carefully constructed facade of control and superiority he had maintained around Olivia, and even in front of his parents, shattered in an instant, leaving him exposed, vulnerable, and painfully aware of the irony that the prenuptial agreement he had once insisted upon now protected him from gaining anything from her sudden windfall. The polished mahogany table, gleaming under the chandelier, seemed suddenly oppressive, the scattered reflections of broken crystal from Barbara's dropped glass glinting sharply like reminders of his own impotence. He could feel the room closing in, the weight of stares from his parents and Olivia magnifying the humiliation, as each second stretched interminably, leaving him suspended in a silent acknowledgement that his authority, pride, and control had evaporated entirely, leaving nothing but the stark, humbling reality of defeat. The room fell into an almost unbearable silence, the kind that pressed on Olivia's ears and made the faint ticking of the wall clock seem deafening, as every person around the grand Nairobi dining table absorbed the magnitude of her revelation, their expressions frozen in shock, disbelief, and an uneasy realization of the shift in power that had just occurred. Barbara's hands hovered uncertainly above the scattered shards of her broken glass, Richard's jaw clenched tight, and even Daniel, seated rigid and wide-eyed, seemed incapable of forming words, his mind scrambling futilely for a response that could salvage any dignity. Guests exchanged subtle, questioning glances, murmurs dying in their throats as the weight of the situation pressed down, making each breath feel heavier than the last, and Olivia, seated calmly with a soft, knowing smile, let the tension stretch deliberately, savoring the moment where her composure and quiet triumph spoke louder than any words could, demonstrating that the balance of power, once firmly held by others, had irreversibly shifted in her favor, leaving the room suspended in an awkward, almost tangible stillness. Later that evening, Daniel found Olivia alone in the quiet, dimly lit Nairobi apartment, her silhouette framed against the soft glow of the city lights streaming through the window, and he approached cautiously, his usual confidence replaced by a mixture of desperation and disbelief, his voice low and strained as he tried to reclaim some semblance of control. "Olivia, we need to talk," he began, hesitating as he searched her face for any sign of the woman he once thought he knew. But all he found was calm, measured composure, a quiet strength that unsettled him. His words tumbled out in a rush, pleading, bargaining, attempting to justify past actions, but she listened silently, every nod and breath deliberate, revealing nothing of the storm inside her. And Daniel's frustration grew, realizing that the balance of power had shifted irrevocably, and the woman he had once tried to control now held both the upper hand and the key to their fractured future. Olivia looked Daniel directly in the eyes, her gaze steady and unwavering, the soft glow of the Nairobi city lights casting a serene clarity across her face, and with a calm, measured voice that carried the weight of months of quiet suffering and careful observation, she spoke the words that would forever alter the course of their lives. "Daniel, I cannot continue this marriage. I have given you chance after chance, endured your dismissals, and silently absorbed the disrespect and control from both you and your family, but I will no longer allow my life, my dignity, or my future to be dictated by anyone else. I am done trying to salvage what was never mutual. The love I once felt has faded, replaced by clarity and resolve. And I will no longer compromise my freedom or my peace for a man who refuses to see me as an equal. Because from this moment onward, my life is mine alone, and I choose to walk away with strength, certainty, and the knowledge that I deserve far more than what you have offered. Early the next morning, Olivia sat at her sleek, minimalist desk in her Nairobi apartment, the sunlight spilling gently across the polished surface as she carefully reviewed the divorce papers she had prepared, each signature line and legal clause a tangible symbol of the independence and control she had reclaimed, her heart steady despite the gravity of the step she was taking. With deliberate movements, she signed each page, feeling the weight of months of restraint, silent suffering, and careful planning lift slightly with every stroke of the pen. Knowing that this action was both an ending and a beginning, the thought of Daniel's pleas, his dismissals, and the condescending attitudes of his parents no longer held sway over her. She was no longer bound by their judgment or expectations. As she sealed the envelope and prepared to submit it to the courthouse, a quiet, empowering resolve settled in her chest, a mixture of relief, triumph, and anticipation, knowing that this legal step would forever solidify her freedom and mark the first chapter of a life fully her own, unburdened and sovereign. The phone rang sharply, breaking the calm of Olivia's Nairobi apartment, and when she answered, Barbara's voice erupted through the receiver, trembling with fury and disbelief, each word dripping with venom as she demanded explanations, accusing Olivia of manipulation, selfishness, and betrayal, her tone sharp and unyielding as if she could intimidate through sheer volume alone. Olivia listened patiently, her expression serene, letting the tirade unfold without interruption, each accusation bouncing harmlessly off the armor of composure she had built over months of quiet strategy and careful observation, her heart steady, her breathing even. Barbara's words grew more frantic, alternating between threats, pleading, and condescending commentary. Yet Olivia remained unshaken, calmly reminding her that the situation was between her and Daniel, that their control and judgments no longer applied, and that the inheritance, secured through the very prenup they had imposed, placed her completely beyond their reach. In that moment, Olivia realized the true power of silence, patience, and measured action, as Barbara's anger only underscored the irreversible shift in authority and respect. Later that afternoon, Daniel arrived at Olivia's Nairobi apartment, his steps hesitant on the polished marble floor of the lobby, a mixture of desperation and regret etched across his face as he pressed the buzzer, hoping she would allow him in, his mind racing through a dozen apologies and excuses he had rehearsed but which now felt hollow and insufficient against the weight of months of neglect, control, and dismissal he had inflicted. When Olivia opened the door, her posture calm, composed, and unwavering, Daniel faltered, momentarily caught off guard by the serene confidence radiating from her, a quiet authority that contrasted sharply with his frantic energy. He tried to speak, words tumbling out in hurried fragments, begging for reconsideration, promises of change, and pleas for forgiveness. Yet Olivia listened without flinching, her eyes steady, her expression unyielding, fully aware of the imbalance of power that had reversed. She had reclaimed her life, her dignity, and her future, and no amount of pleading could undo the certainty, independence, and resolve she now embodied, leaving Daniel stunned and powerless in the presence of a woman transformed. Olivia sank into the soft, sunlit armchair in her new Nairobi apartment, the warm light streaming through the wide windows illuminating the minimalist decor she had chosen with care, each piece reflecting her taste and independence, while the gentle hum of the city outside created a soothing rhythm that contrasted sharply with the tension and chaos she had left behind, her hands resting lightly on the arms of the chair as she breathed deeply, savoring the quiet freedom surrounding her, the scent of fresh flowers on the windowsill mingling with the faint aroma of coffee from the kitchen. And for the first time in months, she allowed herself to fully relax, feeling the weight of control, judgment, and manipulation dissolve completely, replaced by a profound sense of peace, empowerment, and the exhilarating knowledge that her life, her choices, and her happiness were now entirely her own, unbound by anyone else's expectations, and she could finally embrace the comfort of her reclaimed space with clarity and calm. Olivia stepped onto the balcony of her new Nairobi apartment. The warm glow of the setting sun casting long, golden rays across the city skyline, painting the buildings and streets in hues of amber and rose, while a gentle breeze teased her hair and carried the faint scent of jasmine from nearby gardens. And she leaned on the railing, feeling the smooth, cool metal beneath her fingers, letting the serene beauty of the moment wash over her heart swelling with a mixture of relief, pride, and quiet triumph, knowing she had finally freed herself from years of control, judgment, and confinement, and could now fully savor the peaceful, unburdened life she had earned. Watching the sun dip lower, a vivid reminder that each ending was also a beginning, and the horizon before her reflected the limitless possibilities, strength, and independence she had fought to reclaim, allowing her to breathe deeply, smile softly, and embrace the calm certainty of her future unfolding exactly as she desired.